Hello and welcome to a Voices of the Vic podcast with me, Ben Aiton, and I'm joined by no other than James Batchelor. James Batchelor from Watford Way. He is back for an appearance on the Voices of the Vic. James, how are you doing, mate? It's been a long time since you've been on.
Yeah, generally I'm doing quite well, really. Obviously, apart from the abysmal performance that was Watford yesterday, I am doing quite well. Obviously, we just had Christmas, so hopefully everyone had a very nice Christmas. And it's New Year's Eve today, so hopefully everyone has a good old party tonight. But yeah, I mean, apart from the game yesterday, I'm good. But yeah, I'm sure we'll delve a bit further into that. How are you doing, Ben?
Yeah, not too bad. I bought my body weight in alcohol yesterday, thinking that would be enough to watch this Watford game. I can tell you that it wasn't enough alcohol to watch that Watford game, and I needed so much more. I probably needed spirits instead of my usual cider. That was a tough watch, wasn't it, James? Let's just dive straight into it because
Yeah.
I don't think anyone really wants to be talking about this for too long. But I don't think we'll probably be talking about the game too much in this episode. I think we're going to be just talking about Watford as a whole because it's awful being a fan at the moment. I hate going to watch Watford. I can't be on to turn up on a match day anymore. And I've got some of my friends saying to me, I don't want to go watch Watford this week. And I said, well, in the new year, we've got two games coming up. We've got Rotherham at home. We've got Blackpool at home, like back-to-back weeks. Potentially, we could get wins out of that. They're like, we won't win those. Watford ain't turned up for ages. It's a chore going to Watford games now. Do you get any enjoyment watching this Watford team, James?
You know what? At the start of the season, I really felt a lot of positivity. We'd hired Rob Edwards, a young, promising manager from Forest Green Rovers. We made some signings in the summer, which at the time I thought seemed quite sensible. Yes, in terms of the actual profile of player, I'd never really heard of most of the players we'd signed. But I thought overall, largely, we had an okay summer. And with Rob Edwards joining the club, I thought, it's something to look forward to, something to build on as a club going forward over the next few years. And then, as we know with Gino Pozzo, very rash in his decision making, he decides to sack Rob Edwards, and it's really just got worse and worse. And I'm not putting any blame on Slavan Bilic here. So, firstly, before we get into anything else in this podcast, none of this is on Slavan Bilic. But to answer your question, do I find enjoyment in watching Watford at the moment? Absolutely not. I mean, it's really terrible, to be honest. It actually reminds me of last season in the Premier League, where you turn up to games not expecting to win. If you get anything from the game, it's a positive. And I'm really now just going to Watford games to socialise, talk to some mates, and that's really all I go for now. It's really, it's just not enjoyable at all. It's such a shame how much of a farce our club has become. Really, it's not good, not good.
I'm the same as you. The only reason why I go on a match day now is purely the social side. I don't go to get enjoyment out of the game because I'm not going to get it at the moment. Not with this group of players that we currently got. And it's been a tough whole year for Watford as well in 2022. In this calendar year, Watford have played 50 matches. Watford have won 12 out of 50 matches in all competitions. Only Scunthorpe have a worse record. So Watford, out of 92 clubs in the four leagues, Watford are 91st for the worst record. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. I did see that stat on Twitter actually earlier that you just said, and it's really embarrassing. Actually, I mean, the squad we've been left with. You have to think Watford were in the Premier League for 5 years consecutively, so we're picking up all that Premier League money for 5 consecutive years, and this is the squad. We've ended up with. We've got Mario Gaspar playing in midfield. We've got Jeremy Ngakia. We've got William Schuster-Kong at centre back. It's not what I expected. It's really not what I expected. And actually, as I said, it's embarrassing. I think if you're not Pozzo out, Gino out, Duxbury out, whatever you want to say, you are completely deluded. It's not good. And, we've got what we got now, 10, 11, 12 players out injured. It's disgraceful, really. And, I'm sure we'll touch on the injuries again later. I think a lot of the blame has to go on the medical team. A lot of the injuries have been contact injuries as well. But yeah, you know what, Ben? You need to get some control in this podcast, because otherwise I'm just going to go on a complete rant about Watford. But yeah, it's not good. And to lose 4-0 to Swansea after just losing 2-0 to Millwall is even worse. I don't think. I mean, can it get worse than this? I'm sure it probably can, but it's not looking good for the season going forward at all.
Not at all. And I'll try and take a bit of control of the podcast and keep us in the right areas. We will be coming back to everything you've just mentioned, though, James. So we'll start with what we'd normally do. It's for team news from last night. Obviously, the team news came out. We made 3 changes. Ken Sema was not in the starting lineup or on the bench due to a tight hamstring. I've never seen that before, ever, that a player's been withdrawn due to a tight hamstring. Maybe it's precaution because of the Norwich game coming up. But Kamara just got sent off and he's out for 4 games. Ken Sema is the only real replacement that you'd think that would come in on the left-hand side. But no Ken Sema. You'd think maybe James Morris would come in, being a natural left-footed player.
Yeah.
He's played in the academy. He's captained the under-21s as well. Nope, he came onto the bench. Kamara was obviously suspended, who was missing, and João Pedro was missing from the game as well. João Pedro would be out for up to 8 weeks after he suffered a damaged ligament in his ankle after a challenge from George Saville of Millwall last week. So Truce Econ came back into the side, Mario Gaspar came in, and Yasser Espria came in. Watford fans weren't hopeful coming into this game, full stop, James. But after seeing the lineup, it just said exactly how everyone was feeling, wasn't it? Everyone just thought, yeah, we're not getting anything out of this game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, for me, it screamed loss straight away. And I just felt sorry for, all the Watford fans that travel to Wales, because firstly, it's not cheap and it's a very, very long way to go. So to see a team like that be put out, in the Championship isn't good at all. And don't get me wrong, there's still some talented players on that pitch. You've got Keenan Davis, Ismaila Sarr, Yasser Esprilla, Mario Gaspar is a very experienced player, as is Leandro Bacuna, Craig Cathcart. So it's not like we just played a team of academy players who had never played a Watford game in their lives. There was still some experienced players on that pitch. And for me, the issue yesterday was the players that we did put out in that starting 11, they didn't even try. And I think the minimum we all expect as Watford fans is just, give 100%. If you win, you win. If you lose, you lose. But at least you gave 100%. And we didn't get that in the game yesterday. And that's what, really frustrated me the most from that Watford team.
That's it. The bare minimums that we want is just everyone to give 110% for the cause, and we didn't get that at all. And it's an insult to Watford fans, and especially for the poor souls that travelled all the way down to South Wales to support the team. People would have spent hard-earned money. We're in like a cost of living crisis at the moment. Petrol isn't cheap. People might have had to put days off to go down to Swansea as well for it being an evening kickoff. It's an absolute joke. But the players on that pitch didn't even bother. They weren't running around. There was no pressing. There was no commitment. There was no one making challenges. We was giving Swansea so much time on the ball. Like, we know what Swansea are like. They're a ball possession team, and they're going to pass it around. But put a bit of pressure on them. Just show that you're trying. We saw zero effort from Watford players, and it comes back to people saying you're not fit to wear the shirt. I would argue that 11 players last night for Watford were not fit to wear the shirt. And I know we've got Mike Duffy in here. He's put a comment on saying Keenan Davis is the only one to come out with any credibility. Maybe, but even him, I don't even think he's fit enough to wear the shirt at the moment. And then he can't do it on his own. Honestly, the whole 11 players last night were piss poor, in my opinion. Am I being just harsh, James?
Oh, no, I don't think you're being harsh at all. In fact, I think you're being slightly too nice. I mean, if I'm trying to refrain my language at the moment. It was really diabolical. I would say personally, probably in the top 3 worst performances I've seen since I started supporting Watford. It was the lack of effort for me, the lack of desire, to play for the club, play for the badge, and play for the fans, really. I know Christian Kabasele came out this morning to kind of put out an apology and just kind of talk about how poor of a performance it was. But apart from Kabasele and Slavan Bilic after the game, have any other players really come out and apologised to the fans? I don't think they have. And it's really sad, actually, how far our club has declined over the past few years. And I am concerned now, because again, Ben, I'm sure we'll touch on this before we end the podcast later, but the Championship table is so tight at the moment. I know Watford are just about in the playoff places currently, but with a few more poor results and the teams below us winning, we could very quickly, slip down to their mid-table positions. And I think we're actually closer to the relegation zone, than we are to the top of the league, Burnley and Sheffield United, which again is so worrying. So for me, I am in panic stations at the moment. We've got to go out and get some experienced Championship players in January. Yes, we've got Ismaila Kone and Matthias Martins joining, but they're young players. Kone plays in the middle of the park. Martins is an attacking player. But the amount of pressure that's going to be on them to perform is unfair, actually. So we do need to go out and, we need to buy some experienced players. Is the money there? I don't know. But yeah, I'm very, very worried.
I'm sure they would probably go to that Bank of Macquarie or whatever and try and get another loan to make it look a bit more rosy at Watford Football Club when it actually really isn't, and they're probably hiding something from us all. But yeah, James, you're right. We are actually closer to a relegation places on points. We're 12 points away from relegation, and we're actually 13 points away from second place, Sheffield United, as we speak. So it just shows how crazy this Championship season is, and it's frustrating to see. Before the Millwall game, Watford had 4 consecutive clean sheets in a row. Okay, performances wasn't great, but defensively, and we looked like a unit, looked quite strong. In 2 games, we've shipped 6 goals. And if I'm honest, we could have shipped a lot more. Millwall looked decent at the weekend. Swansea, if they had their shooting boots on, they could have easily have scored more. It just shows that this team needs investment in the right areas. Like we were saying just before we came on air, we was talking about Bakuna quickly. I have no idea what he brings to a football field. That was his 3rd performance for Watford last night. I don't get what he does on a football pitch. He runs around. That's it. I don't see him breaking play up. I don't see him passing the ball accurately. I don't see him making chances. I think he's useless. And why we're spending money on him, yes, he was a free agent, but the money we're spending on him on wages-wise, surely there's someone in the academy that would give 110% and would be proud to wear the shirt that can fill that gap. Just until you get to January, because I'm sure you're going to look for new players to come into that centre midfield with a bit more experience. But for the time being, you can't bring in someone from the academy. That would mean so much for an 18, 19-year-old to come through, represent their town, and play for Watford Football Club in the Championship. That would mean absolutely well to them. Bakuna won't care. It's just a pay packet for him. He's not going to be here at the end of season. I don't get why we don't have people coming through the academy. It's a kick in the teeth for everyone in the academy thinking, okay, so we're going to play through all the youth stages. We'll start from 10 years of age, work our way up to the under 18s and then maybe 21s, and we'll get released because Watford, they don't put faith into their youth players. I don't get it, James. You're on the same wavelength as me. It's a kick in the teeth for the youngsters.
No, yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, we were discussing that exact point before the podcast began, and Leandro Bakuna has really just been brought in to kind of fill a place in the starting 11, really. I don't think he offers any quality at all. I'm sure we all saw what the Cardiff fans thought of him when he was releasing them in the summer. There's a lot of comments about his attitude and him really not wanting to play for the Cardiff City shirt. And I think in the first 3 games of his Watford career, we've seen that already. I don't think his attitude is in the right place. And as Ben said, if we played, a 19, 20, 21-year-old in the academy, yes, again, the quality might not be there, but at least they would try, at least they would give 110% whatever happens. And we brought in Leandro Bakuna, who's probably on a very high salary. As Ben said, when you bring in free agents, who haven't played for a while, yes, the actual fee you're bringing them in for is 0, but they do demand quite a high salary. And we could have given the opportunity to a young player. All we needed was someone to fill in that position for 2, 3, 4 games until we get to the January transfer window. And what have we got? We've got Leandro Bakuna, who, quite frankly, again, he's not fit to wear the Watford shirt, and quite frankly, doesn't, from the outside looking in, doesn't really care about the club whatsoever. So it's diabolical, really. And as Ben said, we've had issues with our academy for many years now, with players not making it through. I know Adrian Blake was on the bench yesterday, but he again didn't get any game time, which must have been disappointing for him. So again, I think in the close season, it's something that we should look at, and in developing our young academy players and trying to get them into the first team.
And the Pozzos have been at Watford Football Club for 10 years now, and over the 10 years, yes, they've brought success to the football club, but I would have thought over the 10 years, success would also be bringing through a good quality amount of youngsters coming through the academy and featuring in his first team. We've not had one player come through the academy really that's been a mainstay in this Watford team, and that's a failure if I'm looking at that from the Pozzos. Why spend money elsewhere if you can invest into your academy, bring through good talented youngsters, and they can represent the town and your football club? Whereas instead they're just on about the short fix, aren't they, the Pozzos? They're looking for these rare gems in South America, which, don't get me wrong, we've enjoyed in the past. We've had good South American youngsters come over and they've hit the ground running, but all they care about is coming through and getting a quick sale and making profit. This is all Gino Pozzo what cares about. He just wants to make a quick buck. He wants to make money fast and just keep it rolling. But Watford, we don't need that. What we need now is ready-made players to come into this team and help us out. Like James, you've probably got a few names to your head who you might look elsewhere. Like in my head, I'm thinking, let's go to other championship sides and try and pick their best player or something, or a decent player in that side that will come in, because there's loads of players that would walk into this Watford side because no one in that 11 yesterday were good enough. Like, for example, Bilic just said he wants wingers. I would go to Sunderland and try and get Patrick Roberts or to try and get Clark. Both of them have been incredible for the last few months. And we need people like that to come into this side. I'd rather one of them in the side over Ismail Assar, who, yes, on his day, he could be incredible. He's got so much talent. But he looks like he doesn't want to be here. Like, why play a guy who doesn't want to be here? If someone comes into it for him in January, sell him. Get him gone. I don't care if you're not going to make as much money as what we signed him for. You paid over the odds for him for the first place. But get him gone. He's clearly not interested in playing for Watford Football Club. Is there anyone in the Championship that maybe you'd want to take and bring into this side? Is that what kind of policy you might look for? I know the Pozzos won't do it, but is that something that you think would work?
I think so. I think we are lacking that leadership. I know. I saw a few people actually on Twitter yesterday talking about Craig Cathcart being, the only leader in this Watford team at the moment. And yes, I do agree with that to an extent. But I think Craig Cathcart is a player who kind of leads by example and leads by professionalism rather than actually being a vocal leader on the pitch. And my follow-up question to you, Ben, was actually going to be: would you sell Ismail Assar to then get the funds to invest into other players in the Championship? And actually looking at Ismail Assar since he's come back from the World Cup, and even before the World Cup, I think he showed signs of his body language not being quite right. I would probably look to do that, because I don't know about you, Ben, but is Ismail Assar's value ever going to get higher than it is now? He had a good World Cup. He's scored, some goals and got assists for Watford in the Championship this season. Everyone knows he's a Premier League quality player. Would you look to sell him for, potentially, 20, 15 million pounds in January and then reinvest them funds?
100%, yeah. And he's got a year and a half left on his contract as well. So the value of him's just going to keep coming down. And I saw reports on Twitter today, I don't know if it's true or not, but Villa are supposedly on the verge of putting a bid in for him. I know they're also interested in Deulofeu of Udinese. So it'd be interesting to see if they do actually put an offer in for him. But yeah, take the money, reinvest it into this squad, because this squad needs it. We need investment. And if Sar's probably one of our highest assets, isn't he? Bar João Pedro. We won't be selling João Pedro in January due to his injury, which maybe is a bit of a blessing that we keep him for a bit longer in the season instead of getting rid of him in January. But yeah, reinvest Ismail Assar. He clearly doesn't want to be here. You can spend that money on people that we would hope would want to play for the shirt, because at the moment Ismail Assar doesn't look like he wants to play for the shirt. He's not putting a shift in, and I don't want to seem like I'm just banging on it about Ismail Assar. It's about every single person in that football shirt last night for Watford Football Club. They were all awful. They weren't putting a shift in. we're just so lightweight in every department. Yes, you can say about injuries and that, but the squad depth's got to be better, and it's not. Slaven Bilic didn't hold back in his press conference last night either, James. He said the majority of my players gave their best, but some players didn't give their best. I'm not going to name names, and it will be done internally. But while the majority gave their best, when you put all the performances together, it's not enough. In situations that we're in, and in this league, you cannot carry passengers. You can't do it anyway, but especially cannot carry passengers when you're lacking quality. And it just shows how much of a shambles what the football club is at the moment. When the manager is saying that we're carrying passengers, he's not holding back, and I don't blame him at all. And like we've said before, this isn't on Slaven Bilic. This is on Gino Pozzo and the cards that Slaven Bilic has been dealt with, and what he's just trying to make the best out of his situation. And we thought Rob Edwards had it tough at the start of the season with his injury list. Slaven Bilic has got it much worse, hasn't he, James?
Oh, absolutely, and I do feel really really sorry for for Slaven Bilic, Helena Costa as well, Ben Manga. These guys have been brought in, hopefully, fingers crossed, to hopefully produce some improvement in our performances, and hopefully in this January transfer window, Ben Manga, Slaven Bilic, can get together and look to get these players in who they're not just going to be squad players. We need players to come into the first team and drastically improve us. We've got a lot of Asian players in the squad. You look at Tom Cleverley, Dan Gosling, various other players as well. They're coming towards the end of their contracts at Watford. They're coming towards the end of their careers. We now need to, I would aim for players within their mid-20s to late 20s, players who are kind of approaching the peaks of their careers and who are going to give Watford a lot of years of service going forward. So, as Ben said, I think we need to go to the top championship clubs. Clubs like Blackburn have a lot of talent as well. You look at Ben Diaz, Lewis Travis, players like this who are grafters, and they're going to give their all for the shirt. So, as Ben said, I think we need to invest some of that money, because I'm sure the money is there and is available, especially if we sell Ismaila Sarr. And we need to bring in some players to improve this Watford team. And I find it funny as well that the one area of the Watford team that we don't really have any injury issues in is defence. And even defensively, with our best so-called best defensive players playing, we still look dreadful. So I'd look to potentially look at every area: centre back, midfield, attack, left back, right back. We could potentially improve every area of the team, which is a good thing, because that means we can obviously only get better. But in terms of our recruitment and the years leading up to this moment, it's not a good look on Gino Pozzo and his so-called marvelous scouting scouting policy they have. We've talked about the Pozzo model and how they operate for a number of years. As Ben said, they get a lot of talents from South America, mainly attacking talents. I'll add to that, we very rarely get any defensive talents from South America. It's just for me a culmination of years of neglect, years of lack of investment. I think the opportunity to invest was right after Watford's lost in the FA Cup final. We could only really push on from there. We've done the exact opposite, and this season we've been carried largely by João Pedro. And if we didn't have João Pedro in this Watford team, I'd be we would be sitting mid-table or potentially even lower. So João Pedro for me has papered over the cracks. And as I said, Ben Manga's got a massive job in his hands to kind of find the players to turn this Watford team around, really.
Well, we had lots of big discussions leading up to the Stoke City game away this season after the sacking of Rob Edwards. Lots of fans clearly unhappy. And it's victories have papered over cracks this season. Nothing will change in this football club. Victories may come, but it just papers over all the cracks that are rot in this football club. And we've seen a lot of rot. The investment has been poor. Gino Pozzo has no balls and won't come out to speak to the fans. Just before we jumped on to do this, I listened quickly to the Do Not Scratch Your Eyes podcast with Pete did an interview with Andrew French. They got him on his spaces last night, but the sound quality wasn't great. So Pete spoke to him on his way home from Swansea this morning, and he asked him if he was any closer to getting an interview with Gino Pozzo. And Andrew French said that at the start of the season, it looked like hopeful, or a bit of hope that he was going to get that interview with Gino Pozzo. But since then, he's been told that it's not looking likely now. And Gino Pozzo feels like he doesn't need to come out and speak to the fans. He feels like he doesn't need to do an interview with Andrew French because he's an owner of a football club, and he feels like he shouldn't need to do that. I'm sorry, Gino Pozzo, but that's exactly what you need to do. The fans are in turmoil. We need to hear from our owner. We have no idea what you want to do with our football club. We have no idea what your long-term project is. At the moment, we'll end up being a League One club because of the way you run in this football club. The side is rotting. The defence has never been invested heavily. Like last night, Craig Cathcart made his 250th Watford appearance. Great achievement for him. But he shouldn't be starting week in, week out for Watford Football Club now. We should have invested in that area ages ago. But people to the side of him, Truce, Aiton and Cavaselli, we're not going to go into them in massive details. But again, it's not being invested. Why do you feel to be so arrogant and you won't come out and do an interview just to tell Watford fans your plans of the football club? Like, come on, get off your high horse and talk to us. Don't be a knob all your life. James, what do you think the issue is with Gino Pozzo? Is it down to him just being so arrogant and not wanting to speak to the fans? Is that what it is?
I don't know what it is, because I think you'll agree, Ben. We've seen a lot of Watford members of the Watford hierarchy speak to the Italian press. I think Cristiano Gioretta is quite vocal within the Italian press and is very happy to go and speak to them about issues with Watford and Udinese. And Gino Pozzo actually, I think, did an interview earlier this season with the Italian press. I can't really put my finger on what the issue is. Why wouldn't you want to, speak to your fans and appease your fans? Why wouldn't you want to try and communicate with them and make that relationship better? Because at the moment, the relationship between Watford and Gino Pozzo is the worst it's ever been. And I think for a long time, Scott Duxbury has acted as the mouthpiece for Gino Pozzo. Scott Duxbury used to write a column in the Watford programme every week, which has actually since stopped this season. Scott Duxbury doesn't write anything in the Watford programme anymore, which I think is quite interesting in itself. And whether there's an issue going on there between him and Gino, we'll have to wait and see. But I think someone said on, again, going back to that "do not scratch your eyes" Twitter Spaces after the game, Scott Duxbury collects a very high wage for Watford. He's told what to do by Gino Pozzo. Gino Pozzo is very much the orchestrator of Watford Football Club. He very much makes the decisions regarding the managers. We've all seen that over the past however many years. And in answer to your question, Ben, I don't really have an answer for you, because I don't know why, as an owner of the football club, you wouldn't want to come out and actually address the fans and at least say, what your long-term plan is going forward. If the long-term plan is to actually stay in the Championship for a couple of years, clear out the Watford squad and rebuild for promotion push in a couple of years' time, I think a lot of people would say, you know what, I'm actually glad you've come out and spoke to us, and I'm actually happy with that plan going forward. Whereas instead, we've got no communication. Whatever plan they've got in place isn't clear to Watford fans, because that plan's very much going wrong at the moment. And actually, I think the worst thing that could happen for Watford this season is promotion to the Premier League, because again, I think it covers over the cracks of what is a football club run by a very, very idiotic man. And we, again, like previous seasons, if we got promoted to the Premier League, I think we'd come straight back down, because this squad clearly isn't strong enough for the Premier League. So, in answer to your question, I don't think Gino could particularly say anything to appease the fans, but I think some communication would be very much appreciated.
I agree with you 100%. Like, he's just digging himself a hole at the moment, and he's struggling to stay afloat. If he was out swimming, he would be struggling. All we need is communication. Like you say, if he came out and said, look, it's not going to be a quick fix. I fucked up in the past. I want to get this right. It's going to take 2-3 transfer windows to get this right. And Ben, I'll give you a team that you'll be proud of, that will wear the shirt and will get you back into the promised land. Watford fans will be like, all right, fair enough. You came out, you've owned up, you've you've made promises now. You said in 2 to 3 transfer windows we will have a team that we'll be proud of. Because at the moment we don't have a team that we're proud of. I feel so disconnected to this football club, and half my friends don't even want to go to a game now, and I'm only going to the game for the social side. So what's that say to me? That soon I'm not going to have that social side at all, because all my other friends are going to be like, fuck this, I'm not going to watch Watford. So I'll be going to Watford games on my Larry, sitting on my own in a rookery stand, going, well, I only came here for a social side, and now look at me, I'm surrounded by empty seats, because that's what it is at the moment, empty seats. Like before, James, I was talking to my missus the other week, because I left the Millwall game early, and she was pleased about it because it was Boxing Day. I had to go over to the in-laws. Unfortunately, I had to go watch a QPR game because they're all QPR fans. And she was like, you never used to leave games early like this. Like, I love you getting home earlier and that, but you never used to leave games early. I said, no, until last season in the Premier League, when we was getting pumped 3, 4, 5-0 every week, I just thought, why should I sit there and put myself through this and give 100% to the fans when they're to the players? They're not giving it back to me as a fan. I can't be asked to see people down tools, and we've seen that so often. And now it's leading that whenever we go 2-3-0 down, and I can see there's no effort on the pitch, I'm like, fuck this, I'm off. And I'm not the only one doing it. The stand's empty. That Millwall game last week, James, the moment that second goal went in, the amount of people going through the turnstiles on the way out was ridiculous. And surely Gino can see what this is doing to the fans. Like, it's clear to see for us fans that this is killing our football club. Like, we want to go to Vicarage Road to see a team that we're proud of. You're not proud of this football team, are you?
No, absolutely not. And you mentioned the Millwall game. It was extremely poor. A 2-0 defeat. Obviously, it being on Boxing Day, a lot of people are very busy around the festive period, so that probably didn't help the overall look of the stadium. But I think you're right, Ben. I think the attendances at Watford, have been declining for a very long time. I know when you're in the Premier League, you're facing big teams every week, so it's quite exciting in that sense. When you're playing Man United, Arsenal, City, Tottenham, you get to see the best players in the world. So in that sense, it's good to see Watford up there with the very best. But yeah, ever since the start of the season, it's been a very, very slow decline of people not really attending Watford matches. And I think the Millwall game on Boxing Day was just, it was piss poor, wasn't it? Let's be honest. The performance was poor. The 1881, if we're being honest, they are the most vocal group of Watford fans. They're the group who you think could potentially send a message to Gino Pozzo, the owner, and they weren't very vocal at all. As you said, Ben, when that second goal went in, everyone, including the players, including the fans, we all down tools and thought, you know what? I'm going to go home and have some turkey sandwiches, quite frankly. Do you know what I mean? So it was very, very poor. I think for me, from a business perspective, just looking at Udinese and Watford, surely Gino Pozzo does want Watford to succeed, because from a business perspective, in terms of the broadcast revenue from the Premier League compared to the Serie A, the Premier League is by far the most financially favourable league to be in. So I'm sure Gino Pozzo does have the right intentions and does want Watford to be in the Premier League, because that's where every club wants to be. You want to be in the best league with the most amount of money, with the best players. I just think, as we said earlier, at the moment, there's no, at least there might be a plan behind the scenes, but no plan is actually being communicated to the fans directly, which I think is ultimately the issue here. The fans don't know what the plan is. Hopefully the plan is recruiting Ben Manga and Helen Acosta, who seem to be our saviours at the moment, and hopefully they can magic up, whether it be loan signings or permanent deals in January. I keep saying in this podcast, it's very concerning, it's very worrying. I'm sure if these performances continue, the attendances at Vicarage Road will continue to go down as well.
Yeah, and remember at the start of the season when there was some quotes coming out that Gino Pozzo and Scott Duxbury thought this was a squad strong enough to win the league, and they kept on saying that we want to win the league. You're not going to win the league. You're deluded. This squad is not good enough. And it's just laughable. Looking at where we are now, yes, we're fifth in the league. Yes, we've been hit by lots of injuries, but the squad depth wasn't improved on. The players we brought in, like the likes of Bayo, Manai, they're not up to scratch. They're not the standard that we need. Gaspar, why on earth we got him, I have no idea. Ben Manga and Helena Costa, yes, it must have been a difficult watch for them last night, like it was for every other Watford fan. But they've got their work cut out in January, James. This isn't a quick fix, is it? Like, what positions do we go for? Like, is it obviously it's central midfield and wingers, but they've got their work cut out, haven't they? Like, this isn't going to fix overnight, this problem.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, I'm just looking at the starting 11 from yesterday. You know, starting in goal, you got Daniel Batman, who, you know, at times has made some big saves this season. Could we potentially improve that area? I do think we could. I think the goalkeeping area could potentially be improved. But then again, in the summer, we spent £5 million on Maduka Okoye from the Netherlands, who has, for some reason, disappeared from the Watford matchday squads. You look at the centre backs who started yesterday: Craig Cathcart, William Troost-Ekong, Christian Kabasele. Kabasele and Cathcart are well into their 30s. Troost-Ekong is in his late 20s and isn't going to get any better. You look at the midfield area, you've got Leandro Bacuna, who's been brought in on a free transfer. Mario Gaspar yesterday, when Tom Dele-Bashiri went off, had to deputise in midfield. And then you look at the front line, you've got Keenan Davis, who's on loan from Aston Villa, who hasn't, for me, performed as well as I think he could have this season. And then you've got Ismail Assar, whose body language just isn't there. He clearly doesn't want to be at the football club. And I think Ismail Assar is the key to this Watford transfer window. It's sell Sarr and bring in, you know, some quality and, you know, hopefully get into the playoffs and see if we can win the playoffs, which isn't easy at all. Or it's continue with the squad we've got, hope everyone recovers from injury, and see what happens. But I think that's a very risky approach to take. I think you have to take a proactive approach. Go, you know what? As Ben said earlier, let's cut our losses on Ismail Assar, sell him, bring in the funds we need. Because you know, if we don't go up this season, I can see us being in the Championship for a long time. And if that's what it takes for Watford to rebuild as a club and for that connection to be there again, so be it. But as a Watford fan, and growing up with Watford being in the Premier League for such a long time, for them 5 consecutive years, I want us to be in the big league. So if we are going to get to the Premier League, we have to invest nearly everywhere. You know, fullback, midfield, centre back. You know, goalkeeper potentially, which I don't think will happen. But particularly in central midfield and fullback, I think are the key areas for Watford in this transfer window going forward.
It'll be interesting to see what happens. Obviously, we've got 2 players that have came in through the door already, and I think if you think that these 2 young lads that came in will help Watford, I think you need to give your head a little bit of a wobble. Kone's is coming over to a new country. So's Martins. Martins can't speak the language. He's an 18-year-old youngster who's looks great in YouTube videos, but playing in the Championships is completely different. Kone, he'll be better than Bacuna. He'll be an upgrade on Bacuna. But whether he can hit the floor running, and it's a big R straight away. We've got that central midfield is gutted. We've got no one. And for him to come in and have to hit the floor straight away at Norwich City, it's a big task for him. I said to Mike a couple of weeks ago, I think the ideal game for him would be that Reading FA Cup game, where you could give both those lads a bit of experience, but they're going to be thrown in straight away because we've got no one else. And it's a shame because we've got these young players and we're feeding them to the line straight away instead of like gently giving them minutes here and there, building up their confidence, getting them used to the Championship. They're just being thrown in straight away, and we're just going to just let them sink. Be like, I know development wise, we want you to improve in that, but we can't think about that right now. We need you right now, and I think it's just going to damage their careers, if anything. But James, we've got Norwich on Monday.
Yes.
Looking forward to it?
No, not particularly, Ben. You know, I always look forward to watching Watford play because I think, you know, for a lot of people, you know, watching football, whether it be Watford or any other teams, you know, it offers an escape from the real world, doesn't it? But at the moment, I don't think Watford particularly is offering an escape from the real world. If anything, it's it's making me even more depressed. I don't feel very good watching Watford at all. And it's we're going into a new year. It's 2023. I'd hope overnight Watford will miraculously get all our injured players back, and when we face Norwich, everything will be rosy and we'll be ready to go. But that's not going to be the case, unfortunately. What am I expecting from Norwich? I think they've had their own issues this season, Ben. Obviously, they've just sacked Dean Smith, which I'm sure you'll touch on in just a second. So will there be a new manager bounce for them? But maybe so. We'll have to wait and see. We've always had issues playing Norwich. In the past couple of seasons at Vicarage Road, Norwich have really dominated us. Josh Sargent seems to be that key player for them. He always seems to score against Watford. What am I expecting? I am expecting a Watford defeat, unfortunately. That's what I expect now going into every game until we get some key players back or we make some key signings in the January transfer window. I can only predict a Watford defeat. And you have to remember, Norwich aren't a bad side either. They are fantastic players. They were in the Premier League with Watford last season, and they want to get promoted as well. It's a fellow promotion rival, and Watford's squad has been decimated. So in terms of the Norwich game, for me, I am expecting a Watford defeat.
A narrow defeat or a heavy defeat?
I'll go. Oh dear, Ben, what a ridiculous question to ask. I'll go with a narrow defeat. I'll go 2-1 Norwich. I'll at least go for a Watford goal. But yeah, I am expecting a Watford loss in this game. There's just no. I always used to find a little hint of positivity somewhere. However, in this case, I can't find any positivity whatsoever. So yeah, I'll go for a Watford defeat on this one.
Well, you saying that Watford will score a goal is interesting because who's going to get that goal? Watford have now gone 7 games where someone other than João Pedro has scored for the Hornets. Keenan Davis, is he going to step up and get that goal? He's only got 4 goals this season. It's been a poor return from Keenan Davis, really, for a leading marksman in this championship.
Yeah, it has been a poor return, and I watched him at Nottingham Forest when he was on loan there last season, and he looked really, really good. And when he joined Watford at the start of his Watford career, he looked quite promising as well. He obviously got that goal against Luton. At that moment, it looked like everything was going really, really well. But again, last night, the only opportunity we had was from Keenan Davis and his header. It was a fantastic opportunity. It was 0-0 at the time. If Keenan Davis if he had scored that goal, maybe the game could have gone in a different direction for Watford. But unfortunately, the Championship is a ruthless league. You have to take your chances. And yeah, in answer to your question, I do expect more from him. But I think the service is lacking. You've got Ismail Assar as really the only quality attacking player there who can provide for Davis. And Ismail Assar is not doing a lot for Watford at all at the moment. So yes, partly I'd say it's a fitness issue with Davis, but partly I think it's the players he's got around him. I think if you put Lionel Messi in the middle of the park in this Watford side, I don't think he would have made Watford win last night. It's ultimately a team game, and individuals can win you games, but it's about the team and it's about the collective group. And yeah, I do feel sorry for Keenan Davis, but players like him, when the going gets tough, we look to them to provide the goals for Watford. So hopefully going forward, he can improve.
Well, Watford don't have too much time to dwell on the defeat at Swansea City. They're playing Monday at 3:00 live on Sky Sports away to Norwich City, and this is time for the players to show some bollocks. Show us that you're good enough to wear this shirt, because Watford fans at the moment don't believe you are good enough. You've got a lot to prove come Monday. Yes, there's lots of injuries in the squad and it hasn't helped, but come on, you're professional footballers and you've got to be putting in shifts. We're not getting a bare minimum at the moment, and we deserve better. The fans that attended last night's game at Swansea, they deserve a full refund from the football club, because that was diabolical. It was pathetic. Why should they travel halfway across the country to watch you perform like that? 4-0 away from home. It's a disgrace. You wouldn't mind 4-0 if you put in a bit of effort. There was no effort at all. You crumbled after that second goal went in. You're down tools, and it's the same as last year. The culture of this football club is rotten, and until there's change at the top, it's going to carry on being rotten. And I can't wait to come back on Monday evening or Tuesday evening to do another podcast talking about the problems of Watford Football Club, because nothing's going to change on Monday at Norwich. I'm going to come back and I'm going to be talking about probably a heavy defeat at Norwich because these players aren't good enough. And I'm embarrassed to be a Watford fan. I hate going to work and people saying, "Oh, Watford lost the game. Oh, what's happening at Watford? Oh, haven't you got João Pedro? You should be doing better," and all that. It sucks being a Watford fan. I have no feeling towards this football club whatsoever at the moment. I feel so disconnected, and I've had enough. Like, come on, man up, show some bollocks, put in a bit of fight, and give us a performance that we deserve. Because this is all we want. We just want effort, and at the moment, we're getting nothing. James, you got anything to sum up or a message to the players for Monday night?
Message to the players, blimey. Right, are we keeping this PG-13 or are we going Peggy 18? I don't know.
Well, I've already called Gino Pozzo a knob, so you just I don't think it's PG.
Look, I don't really know what to say. Right. I mean, where do we go? I don't really know what to say, Ben. Where do we go from here? I mean, we've got loads of injuries. I know Slavan Bilic did say Ismail Kone and Matthias Martins should be available for the Norwich game. I believe they've both been training with the Watford squad for several days now. So I think for me, in terms of positives to bring into this game, that's probably the only positive I can find. I would just say, I can actually accept losing to Norwich. I can accept losing to Norwich if we give 100%, which we haven't done for weeks. We haven't done that for weeks. We've been carried by João Pedro. We have been carried by João Pedro. We drew 0-0 to Hull. If João Pedro potentially wasn't playing there, we would have lost. We beat Huddersfield 2-0. Without João Pedro, I don't think we'd have won that game. João Pedro goes off injured against Millwall. We lose that game. João Pedro doesn't play against Swansea. We lose that game. Where do we go from here? I don't know. All I ask, my message to the players is basically just give your all. Whatever the result, just give your all and we'll go from there. That's my message.
Yeah, and we would appreciate it. Okay, defeats are hard to take sometimes, but when there's been a bit of effort and you've given your all, you've put in 110%, and you've left everything on that pitch, you can hold your head up high. And at the moment, we're not getting that. And we can see in the players' attitude, they don't want to be on that pitch. They don't want to represent this football club. And even like the leaders of the football club, I thought we're leaders of a football club. Even they don't look interested at the moment. I'm not going to pick them all out because they've been good for a football club in the past and that, but it's a sorry sight to see at the moment. But yeah, we'll wrap it up there. Sorry for everyone who's watched on YouTube or coming back and listening to this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. It has been a depressing listen. Me and James have ranted for 47 minutes now. But we've got a lot of things off our chests. Do you feel a little bit better after that, James?
Yeah, I do feel better, actually. I mean, ironically, I've got a video coming out later on my YouTube channel called the Watford Awards 2022. And I don't think any players really deserve an award so far this season. So, yeah, that's quite funny. That's coming out on my channel later. But yeah, I don't have much to say, really. Again, Ben, thanks for having me on. It's much appreciated. And I really enjoyed, coming on in past seasons as well. So whenever you're ready to get me back on, I'd be more than happy to come on as a guest. And yeah, I just hope going forward this season we can get some injured players back, get some new signings through the door, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we can have a lot more positivity on this podcast and within the Watford community, because it's not been good this season. As Ben said, in terms of performances in the whole of the Football League this season, only Scunthorpe are worse than Watford, which isn't a very good look at all. So it can only get better from here, can't it? So I think that's the only positive to take, really.
Yeah, 100% have you back on, buddy. It's good to have you back. The channel's missed you, so yeah, glad you're all good. And You Wants TV says, well done, guys. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to absolutely every Hornets out there. You take care, Pete. It's fantastic stuff with Do Not Scratch Your Eyes. I've said it many times before. You've taken that channel to leaps and bounds and above. So fantastic stuff, mate. Proud of you. But yeah, me and James, me and Mike will probably be back after the Norwich City game. Unfortunately, Mike Duffy's actually going to the game. on Monday. I know he joked on Twitter yesterday saying he hasn't got his tickets yet, and he's actually insisted Royal Mail to carry on with their postal strikes, so he doesn't get his tickets. So he actually has a decent excuse not to attend the game. So fingers crossed your tickets don't arrive, Mike. If not, you can always Sky Plus it and watch it when you come out of the boozer. But yeah, stay safe, everyone, and come on, you Warns.